He already spread a lot of stuff, fish kills and everything.
I knew that there was a problem years ago when I seen the river going the wrong way. I threw a stick in the water and it went the wrong way. Instead of going downstream, it started going upstream, and I said, hey, this river's flowing backwards. And old mate says, oh yeah, it always does when they start up the pumps. And I went, that's not right. Shouldn't be able to pump a river in reverse, but they do. They really do. They take the entire flow.
In the history of the planet, there may well not be one person who's done more destruction to our river system on any river system.
Now they need to stop taking and leave that river alone and let it flow.
I'm going 60 this year. That's 20 years time for bloody water.
It's blatant robbery. When the Aussies kind of rise up and say, enough's enough.
I'll do the first walk through and excuse me. You get time behind.
Some of those dry
It's going that way now. No, leave it. I'd like to welcome you all here on behalf of my elders and traditional owners of this land. I'm a Wimichanunga from the Baaka, from Wilcannia. I'm sorry some of our elders not here today to welcome you, but I'm an elder from here. And the smoking is to let the spirit rest and to welcome you in peace. And I hope our rally goes well today. It's for our river. And I also like to acknowledge my husband, William Riley, who used to fight a lot for the river. He's passed on now. And all the elders before him. And all the people that used to fight for the river. And it took a long time to get our water back here. And it's very sad. And it made everyone happy when we seen all the water back in. You know, it's our heart, it's our mother. The veins running through everyone. Not just all for all our Aboriginal, but all for all
Everybody.
people.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
But as you'd like, just sort of bring the smoke in so that it comes around you, you know, just be...
Save the Baaka!
Save the Baaka!
They tell us on one hand, you know, we live in a free society. We don't. The invisible chains are around our legs and around our throat, same as they had before, but they're not game enough to do it. They killed us with their bullets and so on. Now the governments are killing us with their policies.
Hey everybody, I'm Ian Sutton. I'd just like to say I've just spent about 2.5 months coming down the Murray-Darling Basin, and I started up in the border ranges, up in the watershed forest. I came down across the Darling Downs, down through New South Wales and down to here. I followed the river systems all the way, and can I tell you, from the top of this catchment right down to the bottom, I saw towns in absolute distress. They're putting bores down to just survive because the rivers run dry. They have no drinking water. People are sick. Aboriginal communities are in just a shocking state for what is going on at the moment. And can I tell you, farmers are committing suicide. Aboriginal people are on the brink. The farmers that I've talked to are on the verge of rebellion. As far as I can see, there is so much.
Now they need to stop taking and leave that river alone and let it flow. Because what's happening is, when the water goes down, our lifeline goes down as well. So therefore, leave that river as it is, so that us people and our young ones can grow up with it.
That's our kids, you know, that's our future down here. Yeah. Go and have a cup of tea.
feel like
Because we're not leaving. We're not
I feel like
leaving.
We cared about them fellas. We wanted to feed them, wanted to help them. What they gave us, a bullet. A bullet. And the killing of our people, my father remembers right up to 1928. We haven't even got to there yet. So it's not even 100 years ago that you had people in this country still killing people, and especially Aboriginal people. Right? We're going to fight back.
you know, for me, for this community, I've been here nearly 2 years. Happy to, you know, as long as any lawful sort of march or, you know, you're off the road, you're not doing anything unlawful, I'm happy to stand with them. Obviously, I don't comment on what they may think's happening, but we all know that if there's water in the Darling, then for this community, they feel good, and you can see why they're out here today. So hopefully the message they're trying to get across, someone will listen to them and they'll talk and they'll follow through whatever they need to do. We're going to draw a line in the sand and say this road needs to be open. We're getting lots of people complaining that the road's shut and they can't get through. So whilst it doesn't look like there's much traffic, a lot of people are stopping at the council, a lot of people are stopping off, waiting for it to be open so they can get through. I know you think I haven't been fair, but in any other place in New South Wales, if you blocked off a major highway, you would not have been here 2 hours ago.
Bullshit.
They would, no way.
Bullshit.
Unless you delayed somehow,
Yeah,
you used
well,
delay
there
tactics.
is delay actions, right? But I'm saying,
But we didn't do that. We let it go a long way. You think my... Oh, I haven't got my phone. You think my phone...
I know your phone's been going off.
My phone's been going off.
Everyone be able to accommodate us with half a road.
My badge fell off yesterday.
Everywhere. They're talking about blowing up weirs, blowing up dams, you know, taking arms. I've heard that all the way down. And what we really need to do, guys, is pull together and show that as a community, if we unite, black and white unite, we can do this peacefully and make them listen to us. But we need to be forceful but peaceful.
Yeah.
And that's what we're about today. We're going to hold this bridge and we're going to hold our ground. And we're going to wait until we get some attention, until we get some action for what's going on here. Because this is the end of the Murray-Darling Basin. It's in collapse mode. We all talk about the mass extinction coming. Well, I can see it happening all around here. Okay, the climate has got out of control.
We are not going to stay here and just die in our poverty, like what I've seen happen. We've got to stop that. I'm not going to let them fellas with the flashing lights over there turn a blind eye to the crime, serious crime that are happening in this town today.
Right, so I should probably preface this by saying I'm not an expert in Aboriginal customary law, but I do think it's really important to acknowledge that the first stewards or custodians of the waters and the land of the MDB, the Murray-Darling Basin, were the 40-odd Aboriginal nations that traverse that geographic area. And I'm happy to go on the record saying this, that I do think that water laws are fundamentally racist. My name is Emma Carmody. I am a water law expert with the Environmental Defenders Office, and I advise traditional owner groups, farmers, conservation groups and community groups about various aspects of water law across the Murray-Darling Basin and beyond. It's entirely comprehensible why people are outraged. It's been a slowly evolving or devolving catastrophe since irrigation development started to intensify from the 60s in particular in the Northern Basin. So it's, you know, the rage is entirely justified, and I do think they are the collateral damage of an overdeveloped system. You know, dispossession obviously predates water markets. When the British turned up, they didn't acknowledge any of the customary laws or practices in relation to land and water of Aboriginal people. They had quite a sophisticated land and water tenure system.
Irrigation engineers make hasty plans to halt the flood that reaches station properties 40 miles to the south.
None of which were acknowledged, none of which were codified in treaties. There is no treaty between any Australian government and any Aboriginal nation still to this day, which is obviously a glaring deficit of a significant problem and a barrier to true reconciliation.
You know, our freight subsidies are good and that sort of thing to send Chivo and adjustment, but there's nowhere to send them at the moment.
No, because the drought's so widespread.
So widespread, and that's frustrating. But
given that we can't make it rain. I'm working on that, but I've still got a long way to go. Apart from making it rain, which we're still working on, but
So embedded in that National Water Initiative was this idea that water should be commodified and it should move to its highest value use. One of the kind of key concepts embedded in that is this notion that we should create water markets, separate land from water, water that would then be, in inverted commas, a secure property right that could be traded. Now, of course, that was, that's highest value within the context of financial model or an economic model, and there are a host of other values which aren't necessarily properly captured by that particular way of managing water. That model has dispossessed or further dispossessed Aboriginal people. It's made it difficult for Aboriginal people to engage in the market. Water is extremely expensive.
And it's not just Wilcannia that suffers. All up and down Walgett, Bree, Burke, down Menindee Way and everything. Every part of identity is being slowly dispossessed. A slow genocide.
And now we're at the point where in the basin we've got a $20 billion water market, but Aboriginal people in the New South Wales component of the Murray-Darling Basin only own 0.2% of that water, despite the fact in that same geographic area they comprise 10% of the population.
Oh, what? Oh, don't. I did it, cheeky, eh? Oh, no. Not.
They're not bothering, so what I was going to do, I'm going to call a letter to the Prime Minister and Cabinet and tell them I think it's about time they came out and sat on the ground with us and listened to our side of the story now. Because under the traditional law and the human rights and everyone else, Aboriginal tribal people, the people whose land the water runs through, they're the owners of it. They own the water on top of the surface, under the surface, as well as all sacred water rolls and things like that in their country. Now, it's not so long ago I heard they got 40 bores down here. They never told us about digging down and putting 40 bores in below Menindee. They're very, very sneaky. And I mean, that's the only thing I don't like about it. They're doing things without proper consultation. But they'll get caught out.
What is required to rectify that situation is systemic change, and it needs to be led by Aboriginal people, and it needs to be underpinned by the principle of self-determination. So Aboriginal people have to be at the centre of decision making, not at the periphery, not an afterthought, which is typically what happens.
Catch them like with fish traps because they get stuck in there.
When our river's running clear, when it's running good, you see the kids in here catching fish with their hands, same tradition, same methods as our people did thousands of years ago. They're in the water. They're doing stuff in the water. So again, the young people, they love all that stuff. They love when that river's clear, when it's good, when we've got a rise in the river.
There is only so much you can achieve with the amount of water that's available or left to the environment. And in a system where water is extracted for consumptive purposes and the environment has to make do with what's left over, then there are trade-offs, and some systems will face ecosystem collapse, which is what we've started to see in the Darling-Baaka, and the fish kills are a manifestation of that.
Our fish traps are believed to be one of the oldest man-made structures in the world, according to archaeologists and scientists. Now, our fish traps, they're built like a C shape. It's a rock structure or a U shape that faces downstream. Our old people were that smart. Why they built them like a U shape or a C shape facing downstream? Because fish swim upstream. They'd get caught in these traps, and the ones behind them are built like circles. So they'd catch them in the C shapes, then they'd throw them into the circles. Our people, they came together. Our people at the fish traps came together. They built structures, they built friendships, they built education, they built languages, all by coming together.
The Aboriginal Basin Plan was based on customary law, which in essence prevented unsustainable management practices and ensured that the lands and waters of the basin would maintain their health for future generations, as far into the future as we can possibly imagine, rather than privilege the narrow short-term interests of a particular group. I'd say that This is a model of water and land management that we should all look to for inspiration.
Our old people used to share with us about the river. We don't own the river, we belong to it. We don't own the fish traps, we belong to it. We don't own the land, we belong to it. Our duty is to share it all.
Ladies, my name is Chief Inspector Tony Moody. Your behaviour present here is obstructing people and traffic. If you fail to comply with this direction, you'll be committing an offence. I'm warning you again, if you fail to comply with this direction, you'll be committing an offence. The offences include the Traffic Act, obstructing traffic, and failing to leave on a move-on direction.
Swing over the fence.
Don't worry, Uncle Steve, be with you.
Anyway, that's okay, because we get the glory. We get the glory in our hearts to know that we were here and we did this fantastic thing for the people and for the river. And it'd be really nice to see more people just running up to some of these things. Because, you know, civil action and demonstrations and public voice is part of a healthy democracy. If it's not there, you haven't got a healthy democracy. There has to be the people's voice coming out of the suburbs, coming out of the communities. Because if we just have faith in government, well, that's gone anyway. Everybody knows that. Nobody has faith in government. Today, the Australian government is an abomination. It's just an arm of the corporation.
This is why I stand for the river, is because no one has the right to take and sell our water. This water is for everybody and for everything, our birds, our trees, our butterflies, our beetles, our animals, our kangaroos, they all need the water. But you got greedy people taking the water, you know. You got greedy people that want to block off a whole river that has run for millions of years. I was part of the Wilcannia blockade. I stand with the Wilcannia people, with the Barkindji mob. I'm from Menindee, which is from Burke, from Gundabooka Mountain, so therefore I come from the river as well. My grandmother was Caroline Parker from Brewarrina. Yeah. A letter was put to the government from the community here and from communities up and down the river. We haven't even had an answer from that yet.
I mean, when I go to another country to tell my stories, I go and find the elders in that country, whether it's Wiradjuri or over South Australia, there to old Moogie's tribe and all them. I go and I talk to the elders and ask for their permission to let me tell my stories to the class. They should have come out first and approached the people out here, out in New South Wales, Western New South Wales, wherever the Darling flows and whatever. Speak to the people who know the river. But, you know, it's all wrong, all back to front. We say wongabon, back to front. This is how they work.
Zin.